Chapter 9.2 Fibrous Joints. By the end of this section, you will be able to describe the structural features of fibrous joints, distinguish between a suture, syndesmosis, and gymphosis, give an example of each type of fibrous joint. Fibrous joints occur at locations where two adjacent bones are connected by fibrous connective tissue. Remember, there's no joint cavity between them, and fibrous joints include sutures, syndesmoses, and gymphoses. A suture is a surface between cranial bones that is held together in an immovable joint. In the case of a suture, the edges of the bones create an interlocking surface that is then enhanced and held together tightly with dense fibrous connective tissue. So a suture is only found in the skull. A syndesmosis occurs between adjacent bones where they're held together by a connective tissue sheath. Syndesmoses occur, as indicated here, between the radius and the ulna, and there's also a syndesmosis between the tibia and the fibula. And then a gymphosis, which is shown in figure 9.5c, is a type of joint that bonds the tooth into the alveolar socket or process, both within the maxilla and the mandible. The name for the fibrous connective tissue that anchors the tooth into the socket is the periodontal ligament. Figure 9.6 shows the newborn skull and the fontanelles. The fontanelles of a newborn skull are areas of broad fibrous connective tissue that will form a fibrous joint in the bones of the skull prior to the interlocking of the cranial bones and the formation of the suture. So these fontanelles are in locations that will still need to be able to have some mobility during the birth process, but that after birth will need to harden and create an immovable joint or an immobile joint that we see in the adult cranium. Fontanelles are named for their location. In the case here, the terms used are mastoid, sphenoidal, and an anterior fontanelle. The sphenoidal and mastoid fontanelles are also termed based on their position. So a sphenoidal can also be called the anterolateral fontanelle, and the mastoidal fontanelle can also be referred to as the posterolateral fontanelle. The anterior fontanelle at the future coronal suture between the frontal and parietal bones, that fontanelle is the largest fontanelle and the last one to close after birth. Now it's time for the 9.2 concept check. Let's check to see if you've got it. Take the quick concept check by clicking this hyperlink to see if you understand the concepts of Chapter 9.2, or if you need to review them one more time. Chapter 9.3 Cartilaginous Joints. By the end of this section, you will be able to describe the structural features of the cartilaginous joints, distinguish between a synchondrosis and a symphysis, give an example of each type of cartilaginous joint. Cartilaginous joints are joints where the adjacent bones are directly connected to each other via cartilage, and that cartilage can be hyaline cartilage or fibrocartilage dependent upon the location. A synchondrosis occurs when the joints are connected by hyaline cartilage, and a symphysis occurs in locations where the adjacent bones are connected by fibrocartilage. Let's look at figure 9.7a, And the example of the synchondrosis here, which is the epiphyseal plate, that's a location of temporary hyaline cartilage joint. It's temporary because that hyaline cartilage will be replaced with osseous matrix or bony matrix, as we've learned already. And then an epiphyseal line will occur at that location, making it a temporary synchondrosis. There are additional locations where you can find a synchondrosis. Another example of a synchondrosis is the vertebrosternal ribs, the first vertebrosternal ribs and the manubrium. That's a synchondrosis at that connection point, where there's hyaline cartilage connecting the first rib to the manubrium. As for 9.7b with the symphysis, where the fibrocartilage is what connects the two adjacent bones, a clear example of that is the pubic symphysis between the two pubic bones on the anterior of the os coxae. Additionally, the intervertebral discs that are between the body of the vertebrae and the vertebral column would also be examples of a symphysis, because they are composed of fibrocartilage. Now it's time for the 9.3 concept check. Let's check to see if you've got it. Take this quick concept check by clicking the hyperlink to see if you understand the concepts of chapter 9.3 or if you need to review them one more time.